You're welcome again today to Searching the Heart. Well, it's been a while since I did a piece on some of the socio-political events that are going on in our age. And today I want to spend some time to do that. You can check out other videos on YouTube and on TikTok. Okay? So many videos there. But so let us go on to what we're dealing with today. And today I want to look at a peculiar topic. In choosing this topic today, I found it difficult to actually choose between the two. I don't want to sound too much like a religious doomsday person, because more and more we are shifting away, the world is shifting away from the religious doomsday scenario to a more acceptable universal thinking or conceptualization of whatever the future of humanity is. And I wouldn't beg the question by not calling the name of recent people who have been involved in such developments, okay, aka Elon Musk. And of course we know that his emergence has really raised a lot of questions on where the world is going. Let me explain myself. Okay, Elon Musk, not very religious, started out as an atheist, now sort of sides with the religious, yes, especially Christianity. And of course you can refer to my video talking about Islam and see some of the cosmic realities that influence his existence. And so you get a bigger picture as to what is happening. And that is why the paradigm shift, as it were, to begin to consider which direction is humanity going, is very, very important. Refusing to limit ourselves again to one parochial definition of whatever would move human society, apocalyptic prophecy or apocalyptic event that is being forecasted. I must remind us that even in science, it is okay to forecast. Yes, astrophysicists and people who have delved into quantum physics are beginning to go into that area. And so it is important to be able to understand these things, that we cannot always just talk about Christianity as a unique concept alone, but we must look at it from a bigger picture. And this has become very important even for Christians today. So we're going to be looking at this. Again, the topic of this discussion. Should I call it the age of the Antichrist? Or the end times is also a Christian wording? Or should I call it just the age of human renaissance? I don't know. Or the age of the end of the world. It's so many words are used, can be used to describe this very phenomenon. And this phenomenon is a kind of irresistible phenomenon, okay? Following the observations. Now, when you look at the biblical description of from the biblical description, of course, you will discover that it is coming solely from the mind of God or the voice of God, saying, okay, human beings will go a particular way, and God himself will intervene, okay, in human society to change the direction they are going, or to punish them, or to reward them. That is the Christian narrative. But is it, the question we're asking in this video is that really what we should be looking at. Should we concentrate our minds on this, or should we look at it from another direction? And what is the direction? The direction is this set of developments, is it irresistible? Is it going to be irresistible? Is this something that, for instance, the end of the world, is it something that can be stopped? Or is it just rolling down the mountain, as it were, a slippery slope that will eventually lead to total damnation? Okay, so this is just the thing. This is the question we're asking in this video. So before we reach a conclusion of what side we're taking in this whole debate, let us look at certain things that we can see are already happening, even in this 21st century. And number one of those things is the information disorder. Okay, information disorder. And what do I mean by information disorder? Information disorder is when you cannot rely on anything you hear, even see. Okay, you have to check and you check again. And of course, we know that this age of information disorder started with the invention of television. First of all, television and radio were able to come after the print medium was invented, and these helped to stabilize the source of information. People could be sure, if I get this information, I'm sure it's coming from the credible source. Print media was able to establish that. Television, radio, even more, but television kind of put a peg at the end, or put a kind of hemmed the whole issue of information and education, at the very end. But with the coming of television came another problem. People began to doubt, because with television, entertainment was expanded. You could not just be entertained via music, but you could be entertained through pictures, videos. And this created another dilemma. And it was because of television that people began to interpret the Revelations 13 message, saying that, of course, the Antichrist will be coming through that very channel. Okay, people like Kumuyi was known for that. That started the Deeper Life Church, was known for believing that in the early days of the Deeper Life movement. Okay, so this is some of the problem. Although also Christians were able to harness the power of television to also preach the gospel. I have talked about this in another video, which is on YouTube, and which I will also be putting up again. So this is part of the dilemma that television brought to the scene. Okay? Now, but television did not just stop there. The internet was invented. And the internet was invented to make information available and free globally and easy to access, of course, coming at the heels of radio and television. And it played that role. But of course, fears continued to grow as to the idea that computation and AI were going to lead or fast track the emergence of the Antichrist, or the takeover of technology that was going to create a human apocalypse, as it were. Okay, remember I said we don't have to use Christian terms in this thing. Okay, so AI, the internet came and it amplified fears, because you could no longer be very sure of your source of information, and that is why this is what the internet caused. Okay, you could no longer be sure of your source of information. WWW, the World Wide Web, as it was said. Its emergence came at the heels of the invention of the computer, when computers became relatively cheaper and available. Of course, you could not just pick up your phone and dial somebody. You could actually email somebody a distance away, and that was an improvement from the fax machines, or the telex machines as they were, and it became the internet. So this was a wonderful technology. You could do that, and so through that, the internet was the World Wide Web was invented, where people could network with one another, could share information, sometimes freely. Of course, you needed to buy the time, just like you would buy the time in a telephone, but it was relatively cheaper than sending messages via post. You could email somebody right now, and that very minute he would get it on the other side of the planet Earth. Okay, so this is what the internet is all about. But like I said, the problem emerged, and the problem is that you could no longer be sure of your source of information. Remember, TV had already worsened that, created that dilemma. But now the internet had made it far more difficult. Okay? And Christians began to raise alarm. Are you sure this is not the beginning of the end? Are you sure the World Wide Web would not bring in the Antichrist? So this is the question that came. And it was in those times that movies like Surrogate, were acted in Hollywood. Okay, Surrogate. There's another film. I tried to Google to find out which film it was, but it's all about having an avatar. It is in this decade, or in the last 2 decades, that the word avatar became very popular. But before that, it was the word surrogate, or other words were used. And the idea was just that you could sit in your house and you would have a robot somewhere representing you, talking on your behalf, while you just relax and control it remotely from home. Okay, and this was scary to many people, scary to many Christians. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live in a simulation, as it were, okay, where everything will be artificial. It was a scary thing. People hated that. But ask yourself one simple question: has it not happened? Social media has been invented, and that is slowly happening. Okay, people work through social media. They communicate through social media. It started with the email, of course, but social media kind of amplified it. You have your picture there, everybody can see how you look. And it's not just about sending emails or chatting, but everybody, as long as that person is your friend on Facebook or on Twitter, can see what you are writing or what you're saying. And that kind of pushed it a notch. And that created that kind of simulation, that kind of simulated environment where people don't need to go to work anymore. Everything is done online. Now, is that really true? It's not really true, okay? But of course, there is a little truth in it, because now you can even order things online. You just go, you choose what you want to buy, and a drone sends it to you. Or before drones became popular, somebody actually the mailman brings it to your doorstep. Okay, so that is just it. Many people can now work remotely. Okay, so this is what the internet brought up. And I must say that in recent years, a similarity something that was feared in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s has actually become a reality. And that gets me thinking again. Now that we are afraid of AI, will it become a reality? Well, that is something we don't know. We can't say. But just like that, just like the idea of having an avatar or being a surrogate, AI may actually become a fear that will be realized. So this is just the thing. This is just the problem that we want to see today. And we want to ask ourselves, where are we really headed? But there is another concept that is very interesting. And this was another concept that was feared in the late 80s, early 90s. Okay? And it's the concept of seeing crime occur before it actually happens and then stopping crime. This was an issue that the movie producers actually toyed with in the sci-fi arena, just like they toyed with the idea of avatars and so surrogates. And now they toyed with this concept. And films like Minority Report were acted, Total Recall, Deja Vu. Matrix, of course, came later on. And Matrix is a kind of more muted idea, more like Arnold Schwarzenegger's film on that series, okay, of Arnold Schwarzenegger's film. Why am I forgetting this film now? Okay, Terminator. So Matrix is more like Terminator. Of course, it goes into the AI arena, the robotics and everything. But this idea of seeing crime before it occurs was also an issue. And these three films, Minority Report, Total Recall, Deja Vu, actually tried to discuss the implications of this idea. Are we seeing the same thing happening today? Yes. I don't know about the US. I know I've heard stories that things like that are also happening in the US and in the UK. But it is very, very pungent here in Nigeria. Some people are claiming they can see crime before they happen. And of course, instead of crime reducing, crime is increasing. Okay? So this is just the problem. The fears of the 80s, the fears of the 90s are actually coming true, are actually coming to pass. And so I just want us to look at it. Where are we heading? And for me, it has become, it's not just about the Christian issue, because Christians, the problem with us as Christians is that just like the Jews, we tend to know the issue, but it's practicalizing it as, the difficult thing. And so that is why the thing has kind of overflown out of just the control of Christianity as, a movement, and it is actually something that we need to discuss more widely. Of course, the truth is there. These things will emanate from the world system and will hold Christianity to ransom. And of course, we herald the coming of the Antichrist. But one issue is at stake. And that issue is that these things have happened before. Okay? And it happened at the first prophecy of the coming of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And that was done by Daniel, the prophet Daniel. It happened about 100, 200 years after him, when Antiochus Epiphanes fulfilled that prophecy, okay, of the blasphemous horn, okay, that will come out of the four beasts, okay. Again, it happened at the coming of Jesus Christ, when Nero and Diocletian started the persecution of Christians. Okay? And of course, it is said to have happened again about 500 to 600 AD, after when the Christian empire began to recede. Okay? So these are times when these things have happened before. Okay, some people also believe it has happened. It happened during the First and Second World Wars. So it is just a repetition. And the issue right now is that just because we are seeing semblances of the fulfillment of these prophecies does not mean that it is the end time or the final apocalypse, as it were. And so the necessity of beginning to discuss these things beyond just the idea of Christianity or the Bible, as it were. Okay, what form are these things actually going to take? Remember what happened when we discussed Nostradamus. Okay, Nostradamus, he saw, the man who saw tomorrow, he saw what he saw and refused to delineate it within Christianity, though he was a Christian. Okay, and his prophecies began to dictate a lot of what even Christians did hundreds of years after him. So this is what is going to happen again. Okay, we are going to step out of the complete and unilateral control of Christianity in terms of prophecy, because people are no longer buying it. People are just walking into the trap, the prophetic trap, because, of course, whatever makes these things to come to pass is actually coming from the very depravity of the people themselves. Okay, they make it to come to pass. Their desire for life's goodies, for ease in life. This is how these things come to pass. Okay, it has been proven over and over again. Yes, and though the Bible is right, it is not just as easy as saying the Bible has said it. No. For us that are living in this time, what should we do? So this is the question that we must look at. Okay? So in trying to look at this, we are going to be looking at the world order. What is its purpose? What is its purpose? What is the purpose of the world order? Number one is to establish satanic governance. This is a Christian perspective, okay? But it is valid enough to look at. And then number two, there are some who do not believe in God nor in Satan, okay? But only believe that in the desire for human society to progress and to establish good society, we must keep on trying new things. And in trying new things, we will stumble, we will fail, we will succeed, and at the end we'll get it right. So these are the two reasons for establishing the world order, okay? These are the two reasons. Because, and that is why Christians have over the ages kind of avoided being part of any world order, even though the Bible prophesies that a world order will come out of Christianity. Okay, Daniel, of course, chapter 3, very clearly, okay? But they try to, chapter 1 through to 3, okay? They try to, Christians have avoided it. Just for the reason that human nature does not provide for that, okay? Once you try to establish a world order, it deteriorates. So just these two reasons are left behind, which is to establish satanic governance, and to, in the desire to progress, we try and we fail, and at the end we get it right. Or we fail, in fact. So these are the two reasons, okay? So this can be self-driven. It can be a self-driven project, okay, that will create this world order. But again, what might create this world order that will destroy human beings, remember we're looking at the pros and cons here, is the inability of human beings to construct their thinking, okay, to construct any reasonable thinking, okay. So this is the problem. These two are reasons will cause the creation and the fall of the world order, according to prophecy that has been told. Okay? If it is not God driven, of course it will collapse. That is the Christian message. But again, in the scientific point of view, it will collapse because human beings are unintelligent and unable to do anything by themselves. Okay? So this is just a thing. So let's go to the how. How are we observing? How would this satanic world order be created? And what we see is, first and foremost, through commerce. But this kind of commerce actually succeeds via human degradation, the suppression and the destruction of humanity itself. Of course, we know that this is a historical thing. It happened in the Tower of Babel through slavery. So commerce is the aim. Of course, human beings through history have discovered that as much as the more they indulge in commerce and in industry, they will build a civilization and they will prosper. That was the idea from the Tower of Babel way back about 3000 BC, and that continued, and that is why kings would, build armies and conquer the rest of the world. The idea is to bring the people under one government and to indulge in commerce. That's the idea that created the Silk Road during the Roman times. I remember that the Romans, of course, were very much conquered a very large percentage of the earth, even moving towards China. Okay? And of course, the Chinese, after the Roman Empire fell, the Chinese created their own empire, which included the Silk Road. Okay, so this is what we see here. Commerce is at the center of the whole thing. But this commerce is achieved only through human degradation. In the ancient times, it was to enslave as many people as possible, to build the pyramids, to build the structures that made Rome what it is, like the amphitheater, the Colosseums, and all that. Okay? And of course, when we go down South America, we still see phenomenal structures built by human beings just to sustain whatever empire was going on. And evidence of a lot of human sacrifice and slavery was seen in all those places. After that, of course, the Christians built cathedrals, but cathedrals were they were not that impressive as compared to what the Romans built. Okay, so after Christianity fell, now we have the modern. It took quite a few hundreds of years, and modernity came to the fore. But the tools of modernity are a little different from the tools of the ancient times. And what are the tools of modernity? Number one is what Robert Kiyosaki called the rat race. Okay? He called it the rat race. And what does the rat race involve? When you look inside a cage where a hamster is kept, okay, you will see a very funny contraption. Rats are mice, and hamsters are very, very active creatures. And so to keep them busy so that they don't chew on the metal, and if they chew enough, they might one day cut through it on plastic and everything. People invented what they call the hamster wheel, okay? And the rat will get into the wheel and he keeps on turning the wheel and he exercises himself, and he loses interest in whether chewing on the metal or on the plastic and everything. So it's the same concept that modernity has employed. The more you work, the more you spend the money on goods and services. And because you're always spending the money, you can never get rich, of course. So it is the rat race, but you are expending your energy. You are working to serve the system, and you're expending your energy. Okay? And so the system is served, but you never get to a point where you become a problem or you want to build your own empire. So that idea of having too many kings is removed while people are working. They are not really enslaved, okay? So it's a different idea. In the ancient world, they had to be enslaved so that they won't become a problem. But since the world has moved away from slavery via Christianity and via Greek philosophy, now what do you do with people who are educated, who know what they want? Of course, make them, distract them. And you distract them by giving them things to buy, things to watch, like the television. That's why the television was so castigated. It was a tool of distraction. Make sure they never get any focus. And they keep on spending their money, they keep on wasting their time, and they serve the system. So this is what the rat race is all about. Of course, Robert Kiyosaki saw it merely in the economic sense. But of course, it also serves in the very social sense, okay? To serve social dynamics. Now, number 2, in indulging the rat race, all you're doing is working for the top 1%. We all work just for the top 1%. So nothing has really changed. From the ancient times when people worked to build the Tower of Babel and the empires, now people are working just for the top 1%. I remember actually exclaiming on in some of my write-ups, my articles that I sent to 1 or 2 people, that I suddenly discovered that all that was happening to me in the past 10 years was because of one person. And I was able to track the ideology and some of the money and the resources to that one person. Okay? Everything I did, the reason it was being suppressed and being cancelled was because, of course, every other resource was distracted to helping this one person achieve what he had been destined to achieve. And I was forced to come to the realization and to come to try to investigate, is that one thing he wants to achieve, is it really realizable? And now that's a question. That's the question right now, okay? And that's the whole idea of the rat race. You're working for that 1%, and is what they are working for really realizable? And if it is not realizable, that will spell the doom or the collapse of the entire system. Okay? This happened. Remember that this has happened before. And this is what caused the world financial crisis. Okay? In the late 90s into the 21st century, this happened. Okay? Economies all over the world collapsed because there was nothing to work towards. The computer had hastened everything, had made everything very fast. Okay? And there was a need for a kind of reset. So the whole world economy collapsed. And it set the stage for the new world order. But this group of people, there's a group of people that have emerged, that have become the focus of this new world order. And they are the top 1%. So everybody seems to be working for this top 1%. And that is where the film The Matrix comes in. Now forget about Total Recall, forget about Surrogate. Now The Matrix comes in, Deja Vu and all that. The Matrix comes in. Now you have people who you try to liberate them by telling them the truth, but you are actually wasting your time because they like to be in the matrix. Okay, they like to be deceived. They don't have any ambition anyway. Okay, so they just want to have the basics of life and to squander it. And so they are very useful people for this 1%. So this is the second hallmark for this creation of this new world order. We work just for the 1%. Okay. Number 3, how does this world order progress? Okay, how is it created? We talked about the rat race, we talked about working for the top 1%. Now we're talking about failed aspirations. It thrives on failed aspirations. Okay? People lose hope. And when they lose hope, they are more likely to squander resources. They are more likely to not care what happens. Okay? And how is hope removed? By making sure religions that have prophesied such things fail, like Christianity. Okay? Like strengthening other religions that tend to achieve what you want to be achieved. That is turning the human being into, like the Matrix says, a battery. Any religion that turns a human being into a workhorse or a slave, of course, would be a good religion to practice. And so, the aim of this system is to make sure that aspirations fail. Okay? And the more aspirations fail, the more people are less likely to pursue any visionary agenda and pursue the agenda of the 1%. And of course, will accept the rule of the rat race. Okay? So this is the paradigm. This is what is really happening. And it's not just being forecasted like it was being forecasted in the 80s. Okay? It is now a reality. People can actually see it. People are actually seeing it happen. And a very important tool in making this happen is social media. Okay? Very important. People kind of looked down on this. When social media came up, it actually was kind of a muted thing. Nobody knew what is this. And a lot of people really felt this is useless. But it appealed to a particular demographic. And that demographic were the little children, the Gen Z. Okay? The Gen Z had just been born, they finished secondary school or high school, and even in high school, they are greeted with the use of cell phones and computers. And the generation before them was the emailing generation, okay? They emailed and they chatted. They had a little chat box called the chat. There was a little chat box within their email. They could chat friends that were online at the time they were emailing, okay? And this created the social media, okay? Then social media was invented. In fact, a lot of millennials living in the third world never knew anything about social media because it's one of those things. Yeah, it just came out underneath and it got its market from a particular group of people. And that group of people were the Gen Z, okay? The Gen Z. And the Gen Z made social media very popular. Before you know it, because of the popularity of social media, more people started using it. Millennials started using it. Generation X started using it. Baby boomers started using it. It became a required tool. Okay? People preferred to engage with people online through social media than through their email. It was just that easy way they could check your profile. Okay? They wanted to search you and say, who are you? Okay, they just Google your name and your social media page showed up. If you provided that page, even easier, they could just click on it and they would see everything about you. Okay? So this created that dilemma. Social media was used and social media became a tool to engage. Though it engaged the youth very actively, it kept them busy playing online, so they focus less on other things. It also became a tool to create this sense of failed aspirations. Okay, false jobs were created in social media, and when you create those false jobs, you are able to soak in the overpopulation. Overpopulation is always a problem. Okay, there are no jobs to give the people. There is no resources to cater for their ambitions, and so social media became a tool to keep them busy. And if they refused and wanted more, that led to failed aspirations. Failed aspirations, of course, is a factor in the rat race. Of course, is a factor in not having so much ambition, so that you work just for the top 1%. And so this is the world system where I've wasted a lot of my time talking about these things, because they're going to happen anyway. That's how we started. Okay, this is what was discovered. You prophesy, you warn, it still happens anyway. The prophets of Israel warned and warned about the captivity. It happened anyway. Okay, Jesus came, he warned about the end times. The apostles warned about it. For 2,000 years, Christians have been warning about the end times. It's happening anyway. Okay, you cannot stop this prophecy. But what you can do is make sure that you are well placed, so that you do not fall on the wrong side. Okay, so this is just what it is all about. What is the essence of all these things? Why are we even talking about it? It's going to happen anyway. People are going to continue in the rat race because some people benefit from it. Like I said, less ambition. If you're comfortable, you don't really care who is in the top 1%. The only person that cares is the mother who loses her child to a suicide. Okay. The father and parents who lose their children to failed academic ambitions. And the worker who has worked in his life for maybe 50 years or 35 years, and at the end when he retires, he has nothing to show for it. These are the people who will be disturbed, who will be destroyed. But a good majority don't even want anything. They get their paycheck, they spend it anyway, on frivolities. Others, another percentage are actually comfortable. They're in the middle class. They don't really care. Or at least are a bit more comfortable. So this is just the truth of it. So these things will happen anyway. Okay? But the only way what you can do is to when you see it, then you warn yourself and you warn your children. You can't just warn yourself. You can't just be careful, but you need to warn your children. You need to tell the next generation. And this is how they will be prepared for these things. Okay? But the point of the video is simple. We are in that time. If you grew up in the 80s and in the 90s, you wouldn't remember those films we talked about. It was like, God, this is impossible, it will never happen, but it is happening. Social media is becoming a surrogate, is becoming an avatar. Okay? There is terrorism all over the world, making it difficult for people to work, making it difficult for systems to work, for countries to be stable. If you look at the media today, what are the movies that are coming out? There are movies like Alita Battle Angel. Alita Battle Angel is saying something there. In fact, if you haven't watched that film, I want you to watch it. It will teach you a lot. Okay? There are other films, so many of them. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But there are so many films talking about the reality of what is happening. What we've just talked about. And hidden in these films are concepts you can borrow from to fortify yourself in understanding what science you should accept, what you should throw away. Encourage your children to go into the sciences. Of course, you see the attack against education all over the world right now. Why is education attacked? Because, again, a few people are supposed to control this education, and if they control this education, they will make sure certain things happen. So the more we have people in those sectors, Christians in those sectors, the more we can be prepared. We can fortify ourselves. In case Jesus Christ doesn't come in our generation. It has happened before. And this is the problem we keep on facing. Jesus Christ may not come in our generation. Not even the generation that comes after us. So to protect our faith, we need to fortify ourselves and be prepared, and our children be prepared. That means they go into the sciences. That means they are able to design technology that will be a counter against these negative technologies that are coming. That they'll be able to direct their children properly against the abuse of technology, social media. Let me talk a little about social media. Let me tell you something about social media. It is totally unnecessary. It is the most useless part of the economy that has ever existed. But it is there. And there's so much talk about usefulness these days. But we are pampering something as useless as social media. Such things can be done away with. And we can, there's nothing wrong with returning to the emailing days. Some people love antique cars because they like the old-fashioned gear shift, okay? The transmission is even too bogus and it wastes a lot of fuel. So they go back to their old-fashioned gear shifts. There's nothing wrong going back to the emailing days. And forget about social media. Okay? So it takes conscientious people who have seen this generation and understand what is going on to now raise their children differently. Of course, consumer economies like Nigeria, like India, have this as an issue to tackle because we are the people who are actually soaking in some of these technologies and making them really lucrative. The United States, believe it or not, was one of the largest percentage of conservative Christians in the world. But we in the third world are really making some of these things lucrative because we actually patronize them. But they are useless things. They don't do anything for us. So this is just a video to raise your awareness about these things. I'm sure it will help you and to help your life even now to give you some more peace, to ensure the future of your children. I am David Ndichinke for you in Searching the Heart.